Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this webinar about the NIH Fellowships Program. The webinar is designed to walk you through some of the highlights of the program and steps of the application process. My name is Claudia Kinkela. I'm Senior Program Officer in the Division of Research Program, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Madison Hendren and Jacob Lusk, who will help us with questions. I will be speaking for about 35 minutes and then spend the rest of our time answering your questions. Feel free to submit questions at any point during the presentation in the Q&A box. The webinar will be recorded and you can find it on the Fellowships webpage under the link on the slide or also on the Fellowships program page. For closed captioning, click the CC in the lower right corner of your screen. And now first things first, the guidelines, also known as the Notice of Funding Opportunity, are up on the web and applications can be submitted. The deadline is April 12, and let me remind you that it is a hard deadline and latecomers will not be admitted by the online system. The door will close April 12 at midnight. This is our agenda for the afternoon. I'll give you an overview over the fellowships program, discuss eligibility criteria, program details, review criteria, contents of an application, and where to find more information. I will also give you a brief overview of the review process. And as I talk, please feel free to submit questions. The major goal of the fellowships program is to support outstanding and advanced humanities research in all disciplines and all fields. Your application will be stronger if you can clearly articulate your contribution both to your discipline and to the humanities in broader terms. Think about what questions and discussions your project will contribute to and what it will add to those discussions. The program supports projects at any stage of development, that is, early, middle, or late stages. Who should apply? The fellowships program is open to all disciplines in the humanities, but also to projects from the social sciences and the natural sciences that either apply humanities research methods or answer humanities questions and have interpretation as part of their research. From there, we invite all disciplines, all individuals from all institutions, and especially welcome independent scholars and junior scholars. What are the humanities? To give you an idea, here's a list with some of the humanities disciplines, but note that the list is not comprehensive. All disciplines are eligible to apply. And for those disciplines outside the purview of the humanities, we put the burden on you, the applicant, to demonstrate the humanities significance of your project, which the reviewer will then be able to evaluate. Who's eligible to apply? All U.S. citizens and foreign nationals who have been living in the United States for the 3 years preceding the April 12 deadline. No advanced degree is required and no institutional affiliation is required either. And while you do not have to have an advanced degree to apply, you cannot be enrolled in a degree program. So graduate students are not eligible. However, for currently enrolled students, if you have satisfied all the requirements for a degree and are simply awaiting your conferral, you're eligible if you include a letter from the dean of the conferring school or your department chair attesting to your status as of the application deadline. What do people do and produce? The most common outcome of a fellowship is still a book or a monograph, but we're seeing other types of products as well, including ebooks, digital materials, and peer-reviewed articles. Also, translations and editions with critical apparatus are fully eligible in the program. Here's some of the recent fellowship publications. All books were published in 2022. You can see the notes on the state of Virginia as an annotated edition. So those types are eligible in fellowships. And then we have Musical Migration and Imperial New York, Bridget Cohen, University of Chicago Press, and the Aesthetic Cold War, Decolonization and Global Literature by Peter Kaleny, Princeton University Press. Here's some of the key details of the program. You can request an award between 6 and 12 months period, and your performance must be full-time and continuous. No teaching or major administrative tasks are permitted. The deadline is April 12. Please start early and add extra days in your calendar for the submission process. Notifications will be in December. The earliest possible start date is January 1st, 2024, and the latest possible start date is September 1st, 2025. That gives you a 20-month window to start your project and is also an encouragement to apply as early as possible. Our application numbers for fellowships range between 1,000 and 1,200. We make an average of 79 awards per year for an average funding rate of 7%. So it's a competitive program, but do not let the numbers discourage you. The best thing you can do is apply again, and then reapply again. If you do not get an award, you will at least get feedback from the reviewers that should help you apply at the next round. Before we continue to the content of the application and to what your narrative should include, please take a look at the list of items and activities we do not fund. You'll find that in the Notice of Funding Opportunity here, page 14. Among these items that we do not fund are creative nonfiction, advocacy work, policy papers, educational materials, empirical social sciences, projects without humanities content, textbooks, curricula, and dissertation revisions that have no new components. You find the complete list in the guidelines as well. So what do you need to apply? I'm going to go over the various items you will need and show you a list of the complete materials a bit later. It will consist of a set of 7 to 10 components that you will submit through grants.gov. You can find this information also in the Notice of Funding Opportunity under D2, Content and Form of Application Submissions. Page numbers there are 5 to 13. So let's talk about the content of your application. First, you will need a 3-page narrative. This is the heart of your application, and I'll talk even more about the narrative on the next slide. This will be called your attachment 1. Second, and this was new last year, we request a separate page for the work plan. This will be your attachment 2. I'll have a slide for that as well. Attachment 3 is a 1-page bibliography, and that should demonstrate your knowledge of the field and can be used as a tool to show variety in the literature. The reader will know that this list will not be comprehensive. Attachment 4 will be your 2-page resume. This will likely not be able to be comprehensive. I propose you focus on the items that are most relevant to your current project and best demonstrate your competencies for that project. Always always add your language skills. Then for certain types of projects, you will need a one-page appendix. This would be attachment 5. This includes editions, translations, database projects, and visual projects. All other projects do not need this appendix, and I should say should not have this appendix. Doctoral students who are just waiting for the conferral of the degree need to submit their letter from the dean or department under attachment 5 as well. The brief summary of 1,000 characters of your proposal is important, as it will be on the cover sheet of your application and will be what reviewers and staff see first. It will also be used to help us determine what panel your application will be reviewed in, along with your pick of your project field in the drop-down menu. You can submit 2 letters of references. Ideally, they should come from 2 different institutions other than your own and from people who know your project well. Letters are due on May 3rd, so not at the same time as your application. There's a 2-week window where recommenders will receive a prompt from us about 10 days after the deadline, and we'll then have 2 weeks to send the letters in. During this time period, you will be able to check on the status of the letters, and you can send your recommenders a reminder. Again, the deadline is May 3rd. And finally, the fellowships award functions like salary replacement, so there's no budget necessary in this application. Format requirements. I would like to highlight the importance of this slide. Unfortunately, there's no wiggle room with the format, as this is a semi-automatic process, so I urge you to follow the instructions carefully. On the program side, we do not have control over this, and format violations will render your application ineligible. So please do not exceed the page limits, 3 single-space narrative pages for the narrative. Do not attach extra attachment unless your project requires it. Make sure everything's complete, as also incomplete applications will not be considered. So if you're missing a CV or missing a bibliography or missing your narrative, it will be declared ineligible. One tip I have is that if you submit an application and need to change it, and this happens quite a bit, simply resubmit it, and we will take the latest of your applications as long as they arrive before the deadline. So what should be in your 3-page narrative? On page 10 of the guidelines, you will find an explanation of the parts that should be in your narrative. And those are the 4. Here are the statement regarding the significance and contribution of your research, to discuss the organization or structure of your project, what concepts and methods you will employ, what competencies, skills, and access plans you have. Explain your background in the field. Show your language skill, your research materials, sources, archives, and other materials. And don't forget to tell us about the final product and dissemination. Let us know whether it's a book or something else. Describe the results of the project. Who is your audience? Where you might want to publish it, although no publisher contract is required to apply. I understand, or we understand, all of this information will have to be condensed into 3 single-spaced pages. Please look at the samples online to see how to fit all this information in the right format. Please do not try to use small font to counter the page limit, which would also be considered a format violation. The smallest font is 11 font for the application. What is new this year? It was actually last year that it was new that we put the request out for a work plan on a separate page. That is your attachment 2. Because as a federal agency, we need to pay special attention on how federal funds are spent. We added this request last year to have it separated. The work plan should include the current state of the project. It is not meant as an additional page of your narrative or for a chapter description, but simply as a timeline. Describe in increments of, say, 3 months or fewer what will be accomplished during that period of performance, where you will be, how you will spend your time. And you do not need to finish the entire project during the fellowship period, but please discuss when the project might be finished. Also, your work plan should not depend heavily on factors beyond your control, such as the receipt of outside reviewers' reports from a publisher. If you have them in hand, that's fine, but if you wait for them, we will not know that the timeline is accurate. How will your project be reviewed? These are the review criteria that we ask our panelists to use. Before you start your application, your first step should be to take a look at these review criteria, which we give to the reviewers. I highly recommend that you use those criteria to structure and present your project. Again, you'll find them under section E1, page 1516 of the funding notice. I will go through them one by one for you. So the first, the intellectual significance of your project. Tell your reader what your project is about and why it is important. You should explain what it will contribute to your specific field in a way that a humanist generalist can understand. That means no jargon for the reader. You should also situate your project in the broader context of humanities research and knowledge. The main objective here is to ask yourself, how will my project change scholarship? How will they think differently? Step back. Does it tell us anything larger? Press yourself to see the broader humanities significance. One way to stress your contribution is to describe how your work fits in with other works in your field. Fits in with other work in the field that has addressed the same subject. A short survey of scholarship is helpful. Are you taking research in a new direction? Are you using previously untapped primary sources? Are you proposing an entirely new interpretation of your subject? Are you adapting a methodology from a different field? How is the methodology appropriate to the project? In short, what is unique, important, or new about your project, and how will it enhance scholarship in the field? The second criterion is about the project description. Generally, peer reviewers find that a well-written, clear application is a predictor of the quality of the planned publication. So writing a good abstract and narrative is important. Propose specific research questions, explain methods, concept, and approaches you will pursue to address them. And if you have concepts in there, I urge you to explain each and one of them. Number 3 is the work plan. We already spoke about that, but it is vital for the project. Provide a detailed work plan. Be realistic about how much you can get done during the grant period. Be specific. I'm going to work on chapters 5, 6, 7. I will go to a specific archive or use the material. Think about where you're going to be when the award period starts. That will be 9 or more months from your application date. State where you are now and where you think you will be then. The 4th criterion refers to your resume. Emphasize your strengths, exceptional language abilities that the project requires, archival collections that will add to the significance, etc. And the last criterion refers to your work plan, to your resume, and to your project description. Mention the expected publication and other outcomes of the project. Evaluators will look at your publication record and referee letters to decide whether they have confidence in your ability to produce the project. And if it's a digital project, please don't forget the sustainability plan for the project. So we now switch to the submission process via grants.gov. All applications have to go through this government portal, and they added a new credential last year. So please double check your grants.gov accounts. You now have to connect it via login.gov, and there is a way to connect those two. You will need to create a login.gov account if you don't have one yet, and link the two accounts. This is also available on the fellowships program page and adds one layer of security. So how to apply via grants.gov. Your complete application package consists of 4 major components, with your application being just one of the 4 components. And that also has the 4 to 7 attachments. So let's go look at the complete package. The first form you'll need is called the SF-424 Application for Federal Assistance individual form. It has your information on there. It asks for your name, phone number, email address, and mailing address. I would like to stress, do not forget to enter the email address on this form. It's probably the most important because this is how you will be notified, and I believe it is still not made mandatory or required in the form. So do not forget the email address, zip code plus extension. If you do not know your congressional district, I think we can add zeros for that. We need your project information, your project title. This is also the form where your project description is 1,000 characters, no more. Start and end dates of your project is on this form as well, and then you need to electronically sign it. So that is number 1. Number 2 is called the NIH Supplemental Information for Individuals. This form has on it the field of project. You can pick up to 3 field of project. If you work on an interdisciplinary project, you can rank them 1, 2, or 3, and it will also tell us which panel to put your application in. This form will have also URX, so it's project director field of study. So the project could be in one area, but the project director expertise could be in another. So we ask for that. We ask for your address, institutional affiliation, status, senior, junior. We define junior scholars as those who are 7 years or fewer beyond their terminal degree. This is mainly for our purposes. The distinction senior, junior. Reference letters, names are on this form, email addresses and affiliations for your letter writers. I want to note that please enter only one email address for your referees. We will also need something, the project performance site location form. This is a fairly new form. Please enter the location or locations where your project activity takes place. It could be in your home institution or if you travel for research. And the attachments, number 4, that is your actual application. So apart from your application, you will need these other 3 forms. To give you an overview now, these are all the components of your application. We have talked about all of them except the last explanation of federal debt delinquent, which is a required form if necessary or if relevant. So this is everything we need. How to submit your application. The first thing you want to do starting today, if you like, is to register with grants.gov. And make sure, if you do not have an account, create an individual profile in your account. Because the website is designed mostly for institutional grants, it's possible that we get thrown off if we don't create an individual applicant profile. Also make sure that your password is active, that you're linked now to login.gov, and make sure that you submit several days before the deadline. We can say with certainty that more than half of our applications are submitted on the last day. I would recommend you submit at least a week before the deadline to avoid any of the technical problems that might be out there. If you realize you made a mistake somewhere and you want to resubmit the application before the deadline, we will use your last validated online submission. If you have technical problems, please call the help desk at grants.gov. They have a 24/7 hotline for you, and the number is here and also on our website. Oh. So the resources, here are some resources for you to use. We already spoke about the notice of funding opportunity. Those are your guidelines. Sample applications are on the program landing page. They're very useful to see options for how you can structure a project. We also have a query form that allows you to put in keywords of funded project in your areas. It's also a very useful tool to see if you want to find out what in your area has been funded by NEH, to just enter those criteria in the form. That's on the very bottom of our website. Search for past awards, and the link is here. And last but not least, you can reach out to us at fellowships@nih.gov with questions anytime. Yes, I put an extra slide on the importance of the late submission policy that has been very strict, and remind you to not give us or give the system any reasons to not review your application. So one more time, midnight of April 12 Eastern Time is the deadline. Make sure it's complete application, has all the attachments, is not too long, and follows our instruction in that. One other piece of strategy is to think about the timeline of your application from submission to notification. The federal grant process is long, about 8 months for fellowship applications. So again, think about where you will be or in your project 8 months from now. If you send in your application on April 12, you can see these steps. So you submit it on April 12, peer review takes place in June and July. Then we will have time where we write reports. Our National Council on the Humanities meets and will review all of our recommendation, and in the end, only the chair is by law allowed to make funding decisions. Keep these steps and the timeline in mind as you plan to prepare your application. Write your application with various audiences in mind, from the peer review to NEH staff and general leaders. And finally, a few more frequently asked questions. I'd like to go through our dissertation revisions eligible. Projects based on dissertations need to demonstrate how their projects move beyond original dissertation. Applicants may seek funding for projects based on dissertations, but you must state what you added. May be a chapter, new archival research, anything that goes beyond. Can I apply with a collaborative project? If you're working on a collaborative project, each collaborator must submit an individual application. The fellowships program is designed primarily for individual researchers, so the award may not be divided among multiple collaborators. Each person must seek funding for their own part and specify very clearly in the narrative where your individual contribution lies. So if there are 2 applications for the same project in the pool, we'll ask reviewers to review each on its own merits and make sure you explain how the work is divided and which parts are yours and which parts are the larger whole. If you're a team of collaborators, I would also point you to our other program, collaborative research program for larger teams as well, for 2 and larger teams. Can I apply to other grant programs concurrently? Yes, you can apply to most other grant programs concurrently, including Public Scholar, summer stipends, but you can only apply to one of the following in a fiscal year. So if you apply to fellowships, you cannot apply to awards for faculty at Hispanic serving institutions, historically Black colleges, universities, and tribal colleges and universities. You could also not apply to our Mellon Fellowship for Digital Publication program. You have to decide one or the other. And yeah, those are the main ones. Should I apply? So if you have a digital project, should you apply to fellowships or the NEH Mellon Fellowships for Digital Publication? That is completely your choice. All applications are welcome in the fellowships program. Digital project in ebooks. The Mellon Fellowships for Digital Publication is particularly for projects that require digital expression and are born digital, that, for example, have music clips or other digital or visual clips in there that cannot be expressed otherwise. Does my university or college submit the application for me? Absolutely no. In this case, it's important that you submit from your computer because you will get the notifications, and we'll send everything to the email that you provided us in your application. And that brings me to the end. That was a lot of information. I see questions coming in. I'm opening the floor, Jacob and Madison.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for the questions you've submitted so far. We're going to try to keep an eye on them as they keep coming in. You can see that there are a lot of questions, so we'll try to keep up as best we can. But we do have a few questions, and please note, we can only take questions via the chat right now, so we're not going to open up for verbal discussion. Claudia, we've gotten a few questions that I think are kind of useful for everyone. We've got some questions about who should people ask to serve as their letter writers? Who are referees that will be most likely to help them in the competition?
Thank you for that. It is up to you. I mean, it's your choice. There are no rules or restrictions for who to ask. I will speak from what I've seen in the past. I would recommend you take recommenders from 2 separate institutions if you can, preferably even not on your own if you have that option. Sometimes we're asked, should I ask somebody with a big name in the field, or should I ask the person who knows my project better? Again, that's your choice. I would probably go with the person who knows your project better, because the letter will be more informed and more detailed and can speak to your qualification for the project. For our young scholars, I would say try to not use the dissertation director after a few years past your degree, because panelists will weigh that more critically or more positively if you sort of can show that you have a bit of a network past the dissertation director. If you do not have that, it's absolutely fine to use them. So it all depends on each case.
We've gotten a few questions about the award itself, how it's set up, how payments are made. So I just want to go over some of that information very quickly. The award is designed to act as salary replacement while you step away from your usual responsibilities to work on the project full time. So the stipends for the award are made in the amount of $5,000 per month, and your award period needs to be between 6 months and 12 months. So and the award value will be $30,000 to $60,000. And as Madison pointed out earlier, you can do any increment within 6 to 12 months. You could do 8 months for $40,000, for example. The funds will be paid out. You would get a payment schedule from our Office of Grant Management, laying out when you'll get payments, usually in 2 to 3 month increments, based on your award period dates. We got a question about taxes. We, as NEH employees, are not tax experts or professionals, and we're not allowed to give tax guidance, but I can tell you that you will get the flat $5,000 per month amount, and you will need to consult with your personal tax professional about that. You can have the funds directly deposited into your personal banking account. Many people do choose to route the funds through their institution first, because the institution is allowed to use the funds towards your fringe benefits. But all other funds are meant to be passed along to you. So Madison, can you think of anything I'm not hitting there?
No, the only thing is, and you might have mentioned it, I was typing, the funds can be routed through your university, and benefits, healthcare benefits deducted, but that's your choice to make.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I would add to that.
Okay, great. So we got a few questions about who our panelists are in this program or generally at NEH. Claudia, do you want to take that?
Thank you great question. Who are the panelists? We use a mix of reviewers for fellowships panels. Fellowship has a two-stage review process. So we have 2 rounds. So we have 1 round of review in May, June, where we ask 3 scholars to review applications. And then we have a second round in July, late July and August, where we have 4 other panelists to review for new and other to discuss the applications. Who are they? There are a mix. So we like to have former fellows. We use people from our database. We also like to have new people on board. We are always looking for panelists, junior, senior scholars. We welcome all. So this is a good moment to let you know if you're interested in reviewing applications for us. Please do. Maybe Jacob or Madison, if you have the link for the sign-up sheet. If not, I can find it for you or send us an email. Just send it to fellowships@NEH, and we will be happy to take your names and ask you when we need.
I will put that in the chat right now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And going off of that, we got a question earlier about how we decide what sorts of panels your application will be reviewed on, and this sort of relates to in the application forms where it allows you to choose a category such as United States history or philosophy of religion, for example. Claudia, you may have more to say about this, but I would say that we use those categories as sort of a starting point for understanding how you think of your project. But at the end of the day, we really want to, based on who we've recruited to serve as panelists, we're going to put your application in a panel that will give it sort of the best review. We want you to get the best review you can with reviewers who are closest to your field. So the categories are very helpful for us for getting that sorting process started with the many applications we receive, but ultimately we do take a look at every application and want to make sure it gets reviewed in the best place. Does anyone have anything to add to that?
Yes, it's a very good point. So the reason why we have, let's say, you have 3 options of project fields, because our panels are designed from the bottom up. So that means we will design the panels based on the applications we get in. So we get 1,000 applications, let's say, then we need to put them in certain panels. But the categories that your project is in might not be able to fit in sort of a category that we have. So we're asking for 1, 2, and 3 so that we can then place you accordingly to make sure that you're reviewed in the best place. And as Jacob said, we are looking for the place where your application will be read most sympathetically. That's the goal for us. So we want to give it a really good read and have you have good feedback.
We got another question about work plans. We did get one question as to whether we have examples of work plans yet. Claudia, are there any on the website yet?
No, I apologize. There are no work plan samples on the website yet because, yeah, we're only in our second year. So hopefully by next year we'll have some. We can't use pending applications or recent ones. I would just follow the commonsensical idea of creating a timeline. It doesn't even have to be long. It doesn't have to cover the whole page. Just breaking up your timeline in chunks of 3 months time or whatever makes sense for the project. Saying, okay, January through April, I will work on chapter 5, 6, 7, or I will go to do archival research in the summer. Anything that makes sense. It really just meant for us to know what you're doing during the period of the fellowship, and also helpful to just say where are you in the project when the fellowship starts. Like say, okay, I've completed a draft of chapter 1 and 2, but during the I will do the rest 6, 3, 4, 5, and I'm planning to submit it to the publisher next year in 2 years, whatever is true. I think I did see something about how many months you can apply for. So you can apply for 6 to 12 months, and you pick the amount of months that you have time for. So if you think you have time for only 8 months, you apply for 8 months. If you have time for 12, apply for 12. Does not make a difference at all in the review process, whether you apply for 6 or 12. There's no consideration. It's not easier or harder one way or another, but it's more about how much time you have to do this. And then we will give you the amount that you asked for. We do not consider any changes in that time request. One quick tip on that, you can, if you are not sure, if you get 12 months, but you might be, I would ask for the maximum that you think you can use. You can always cut back, like when time comes and you get an award, you can say, oh, I can only do 8 or 6, but you can't go the other way. So that's one way to think about the time.
We also, going off that, we did get one question that I wanted to give to you, Claudia or Madison, about obviously they're proposing a plan of work that potentially could be a year or 2 out from now, and the question was in regards to at what point in the project leading to publication can the activities be funded once they're sending out the manuscript for readers' reports, for example. Is that time period eligible for an award?
Thank you. Yes. So that's the question about review. I mean, how to, if you have sent your manuscript off already, the question will be for the reviewer, what are you going to do with the time? So let's say you apply for 6 months, but you're still waiting to hear from the reviewers. That's the part where we will not be able to know whether you get them back in time, whether you have them back in time. It's okay, I will respond. That's a different timeline. So that makes more sense to the reviewer and to us. And the other question is, if you're almost done, it would be worth explaining exactly what it is that you have to do. Just if sort of the question will be, will there be enough work left, let's say? I would just express that very clearly in the work plan, what is still left to do. Is that was that the right question? I mean, did I answer that question?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, does the program fund translations? Yes, we do fund translations. We mostly see monograph projects being proposed, but we're always excited when we see translation projects. We did have someone asking, does it have to be in English or from English. So potentially writing a translation. And more broadly, we get questions about whether the final product has to be written in English. Claudia, do you want to take that?
So translations are fully eligible in this program. We have always maintained that in fellowships. I think the crucial part here is the apparatus that you also bring. So I think a pure translation might not be competitive. It's eligible, but if you are writing an introduction that's something interpretive about that translation, and you have the critical apparatus, I think you're in the right place.
We've gotten a couple of questions about ownership of the final product. Just to be clear, NEH expects that when if you receive support for your project, NEH expects that you'll cite the support that it has given you in your acknowledgements, for example, but NEH does not claim ownership over any final products. We're just hoping to support the strongest ones.
Oh, can I forgot to answer the question whether we fund anything other than in English. Was that a question?
Yeah.
A product. So a product that's not in English, we have supported such projects, but you would have to make a real, like let's say you wanted to write it in Spanish. We've seen those. We have to again make a strong case for why it is needed in Spanish, and I'm sure you can make that case. It's just something that the reviewers will want to know. Why not in English? Why in Spanish? So we want to talk about that.
One thing I want to circle back really quickly to in regards to letters of recommendation. A lot of people don't realize this. It's not always very clear, but your letter writers actually have a little bit longer than the application deadline to submit their letters. We're actually not even going to prompt your referees until after a couple of weeks after the application deadline. So the idea really is that you'll need to prepare your proposal prior to the application deadline, and you can send them a copy for them to see, because certainly you're going to want them to engage with the project in their letter. And a couple weeks after the deadline, when we've done our initial review for eligibility, completeness, etc., we'll contact your referees and ask them, and they'll have another week or two to submit the letter at that point. Madison, have you noticed any questions coming in through the chat that you think might?
I believe we talked about it a little bit, but there have been a couple more questions about the publication requirements and whether you need a publisher lined up or if it's helpful to mention publisher interest in your project. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit more.
You want to take that?
Sure, yeah. So there's no publication requirement to apply. It certainly does not hurt to mention that you've received some interest from publishers, or to I would encourage you to mention potential publishers that you're considering, but there's no requirement, and mentioning interest won't, of course, not guarantee that your project is funded, but it certainly cannot hurt. I hope that that answers the question. I don't know, Claudia, if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter at all whether you have a publisher or not in an advance contract for the review of the project. Most reviewers do not, and we don't ask them to pay attention to that fact. Yeah, some panelists know that sometimes those advanced contracts don't mean that much. So I think it's more important to focus on the front end of the project. And two quick things I saw briefly in the chat, maybe a clarification of the recommenders letters about why not to use the dissertation director, or if at all. I think you should use the dissertation director if you're, if you're just out of the PhD program for a few years. But the reason I say it, it's not that you can't do it. It's more that panelists will ask or no, this is sort of the question of endorsement versus not, whether you have, they are interested in seeing that you have spread out and created maybe a network, found other scholars in your fields. So I think that's just a recommendation. That's not a a requirement.
We've gotten quite a few questions that relate to doing work or people who are outside the United States. So I just want to clarify, and I'm wondering if maybe some concerns are also coming from our citizenship requirements. So the only thing that matters to us in terms of United States or outside the United States is that all applicants need to either be U.S. citizens or have lived in the United States for 3 years at the time of application, by which we mean maintain a primary residence in the United States. If you went abroad for a vacation or a research trip in the past 3 years, that doesn't disqualify you, if you've lived here. So then moving on to other questions we've gotten. Yeah, you can absolutely do archival research outside the United States during your fellowship program. That's absolutely fine. Your project can be about something that is unrelated to United States history, culture concerns, and your referees can be at institutions outside the United States as well. So I hope that answers all the questions relating to that. And then we've also gotten a lot of questions about the idea of stepping away from work. Claudia, maybe you want to take this. I mean, we do expect a full-time commitment for we're funding you to work on your project full-time, and consequentially, our expectation is that you'll step away from all your teaching and research
administrative
role. Claudia, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so historically, really, we have to look at this in perspective. The fellowships program is designed for mostly for scholars who need the time. So and so we think nothing else should take away from your writing or research time. So no teaching and no major administrative duties. Now we have received more requests about other work that you can do, and those are usually decided case by case. If we say very clearly it has to be an exception. If it's just for like you want to go to conferences and do this and smaller things, that shouldn't be a problem at all. But if it's a permanent engagement, we need to know about it, and you would send us a note if you get awarded, and we can see how we can help you or how we can do with this. But we can't sort of say, okay, you get 3/4 of a fellowship or half a fellowship. That's just not in the purview of the program as it is designed right now.
We just got a question that is quite common about the line between the humanities and the social sciences. And this person specifically noting that we do fund applications in cultural anthropology. So we'll say this, we put it on the applicant to sort of make a case for the significance of their project to the humanities, to humanities scholarship. And so, yes, we regularly receive applications in anthropology, and we also receive applications in other disciplines, and that are making a case for why their project is significant to the humanities. Claudia, do you have more to say about that? I just want to assure this person that their application will be.
Yeah, we see we actually get a lot of application in anthropology and archaeology. And I like to say sort of the other borderline disciplines, sociology, psychology, political science, those are, or even history of medicine comes to us. So anything that has any historical part comes to us. And the major, and Jacob is spot on. So we would ask you to tell us, so where is your humanities contribution? You can have other parts. You can have quantitative studies, qualitative studies, social science methods. It's all welcome. So, but what sort of do you bring to the humanities? Where is your interpretive part? Where is your sort of framework for questions that are relevant to the humanities? So that's all we ask, really, and that's what the reviewers will look at. And we get quite a few sort of these both projects that cover both worlds. I think I'm going to talk a bit about the two-tier process. Is that a question I just saw? I briefly mentioned, so fellowships, it's the only program in the endowment that has a two-tier process. And we will inform you sort of at the end. We will not break up the process to let you know what happened, but sort of it's a full cycle, and at the end of the cycle in December, we'll notify all applicants whether you received an award or not, and then you can request the comments for your project, and that's sort of the way to find out how far you made it, because you will see at the comments how many comments you get back. Is it 3? Is it 7? Is it 6? Reviewers, that's sort of your way of knowing, but you will have to wait until the end of the process, and then come back to us with questions or reply.
We've gotten a couple questions about whether we can fund projects that are meant for a general audience. Claudia, do you want to take that?
Yes, absolutely. If you look at the review criteria, the first one talks about the significance for the scholarship audience, or general audience, or both. So I think the implication here is that we are looking for projects that are scholarly researched, but if you reach out to a broader audience, that's wonderful and should be applauded. Doesn't have to be, but we're fellowships, so we can do both. If you want to write for a broad audience, I would also send you over to look at the Public Scholars program that is specifically designed for that audience. And it's a wonderful program that supports books of that nature that just also have a higher publication rate and reaches a much larger audience than some of the scholarly books we see in fellowships.
We've had a few questions about concurrent applications in different programs. I want to just think as simply as I can put it, you are allowed to compete concurrently in the summer stipends program if you apply to the fellowships program. That said, you cannot apply to the awards for faculty program or to the NEH Mellon Fellowships program in the same year. Public Scholar, of course, is a completely separate program, so you can apply to that as well. Any other big ones that I'm forgetting? and you can have concurrent applications in other divisions at the NEH as a member on a team for institutional projects.
Yeah, and you find that list on the they're listed individually in the guidelines in the notice of funding opportunities, so you can check back on there. But the idea is that the restrictions apply mostly to individual programs, but not to the institutional ones.
Madison, have you seen any other questions that are more broad? And I feel like we're reaching the point where I know that some people, we might have missed your question, so I just want to remind everyone, if we don't get to your question right now, we're still very happy to help you after this presentation. If you want to send us an email, I've put my personal email in the chat several times. I'll do it again now. And you can also email fellowships@nih.gov, and I'll try to get back to you there. But we will, I'm not ending things. I just want to note that we're trying to answer as many questions as we can, and at this point trying to answer the broadest ones that apply to the most people. So we'll still moderate the chat.
Would you put the Public Scholars Program link?
Yeah, I will do that.
In the chat, I think, yeah, if you want to check out that program, it has a deadline the end of the year, so we have time to think about that. But also, I think I just saw about the question, do you need 7 excellent ratings to be awarded? You do not have to have 7 excellent ratings. It's actually pretty rare to get that, but anything helps. Of course, excellence and very goods, but we look at both comments and ratings at the same time. I would recommend not worrying about it too much from your end until you you just use the review criteria to help you along. And if you get feedback, maybe, then it would be worth, we're happy to have a conversation about those results, or I repeat my my request. If you want to see the process from the inside, the best thing really is to be a panelist or a reviewer and see for yourself how you would rate applications if you're the reviewer, and then take something away from that as well. That would be one idea.
Yeah, and you might have mentioned it in your presentation, Claudia, but just to confirm, there's more review after the panelists. The panelists aren't actually choosing winners for the competition. They're providing us with advice. Essentially, their role is advisory, and our program officers, make recommendations to the National Council on the Humanities, and the chair of the NEH is the person who ultimately makes all funding decisions. One thing I like to tell people is that no one panelist can ruin your chances. There's a lot going on behind the scenes in the review process. We're still monitoring the chat and have
we did get a question about drafts, and unfortunately in this program we do not review drafts, but if you have specific questions, we're happy to address those, so you can email us. But some NEH programs do review drafts. Unfortunately, the fellowships program, just due to the volume, is not one of them, so we cannot review a draft.
Does that cover most of questions? I hope so.
We just got one maybe one of the most common questions ever. What's the funding success rate? We post this on the program webpage. The success rate is usually around 7%. We generally receive anywhere from 1,000, 1,100 applications in a year, and have tended to fund 75, 80. Claudia, does that sound right to you?
Yes, so the funding ratio, we have the lowest funding ratio in the endowment, around 7% right now. I say every year I want to push it up as much as we can. It depends, of course, on the budget. And we always have more very good and excellent proposals than we can fund. So my recommendation is that you have to come back, apply and reapply, try again. It's simply that the budget is what it is, and the fellowship is the program which gets the most applications. But again, I would encourage you to think about the process from that end as well, and not feel discouraged by the numbers, but just understand that it might take an extra year to get funding or apply again, 2 or 3. We have seen applications come in multiple times, and the panelists do not know that it's a repeat application, so you don't have to address that at all in the narrative. I would just start over every time, and you have a clean slate every year with us.
Yes, that's key to know. We've gotten a question about if we try to make awards kind of equally across all the fields in the humanities. Do we prioritize anything? No, it's really about what comes in that gets the strongest panelist evaluations and what we can make a case for funding. Some years we might have more projects in philosophy, some years we might have less. Same for anthropology, art history. So yeah, and those projects are of course reviewed. Our panels are disciplinary, so those projects are reviewed together. But some years are just stronger in one field and not as much in another. So we just see what comes in.
Great.
Can we comment more on our core values?
Not sure I understand the question. I'll take it, and then I think we'll wrap it up. I think the core, if I understand the question, we go by the review criteria. So the values are really it's merit, and the merit is expressed through the review criteria. We have no quotas, no target in this program. We trying to get original, significant new projects, whichever way you want to phrase it, in fellowships. The endowment has also initiatives. So the chair has brought forward a new initiative, American Tapestry, where we do talk about projects that are more, in certain areas like climate change, equity, and democracy questions. So there are other attempts to reach out and broaden our initiatives that way. If we just talk about fellowships, we're going to stick with these review criteria that we've talked about today, and that's sort of, I think, my answer to that question. I hope that's useful. So I think I would like to wrap it up. If you have questions that we didn't answer, I apologize. Fellowships@neh.gov is where you reach us. It'll be Jacob mostly, and me, and maybe Madison if she's free. Thank you so much for joining us today, and looking forward to your applications. Thanks.